Hello, my name is Lara, and today I'm going to share an incredible and transformative experience from one of our dear followers, Clara Almeida, a respected astrologer and spiritual guide. Clara's life took an unimaginable turn in early 2025 after she went through a near-death experience that altered everything she believed about life, death, and the universe. What she found during these moments will challenge everything you think you know about the world we live in and what is yet to come. Clara's experience revealed hidden truths about the future, including an extraordinary cosmic shift marking the end of a 26,000-year cycle. Let's dive into Clara's incredible journey. It was February 21st, 2025, a cold but clear night. Clara Almeida, a well-known astrologer from Recife, had just finished a long day of consultations. With her routine filled with sessions and readings of astrological charts, she was used to being in constant contact with cosmic energy, but in the last few days, she felt something different. It was as if a change was happening, something she couldn't explain. After finishing her work, she decided to visit a close friend in a distant neighborhood. The trip should have been quick, just 15 minutes, but something about that night felt unusual. The sky was darker than usual, and the stars seemed to pulse intensely, as if they wanted to communicate something. As she drove down a road she knew well, something unexpected happened. A truck veered into her lane. Clara had just enough time to see the blinding headlights before the impact. The sound of metal twisting and glass breaking echoed in her ears as the car slammed against the road, skidding violently. Her head hit the side window, and then silence. Clara remembered the sensation of her body going lifeless. Her breathing slowed, and gradually the sound of her heartbeat grew distant. The cold of the night seeped into her skin, and then everything stopped. There was no fear, only a profound silence. Clara knew she was dying. In the distance, she could hear muffled voices, and the flashing lights of an ambulance flickered through her closed eyelid. The paramedics were trying to revive her, but Clara felt herself drifting further away. She knew that her life, as she had known it, was coming to an end. There was no panic, only surrender. In that moment, Clara felt a tremendous pull, as if an invisible force was lifting her out of her body. She could see everything from above. The chaos of the crash, the desperate paramedics trying to resuscitate her, the flashing blue and red lights illuminating the dark road. It was like watching a movie from outside of herself. Then, she felt warmth. A soft light began to surround her, starting faintly and then growing until it filled her entire being. Clara felt herself being drawn upwards, away from the broken body below her. She realized she was crossing into something beyond the physical world. Clara floated in a weightless space, surrounded by pure light. It wasn't like the sunlight or any artificial light she had ever seen, but something alive, pulsating with energy. This light emanated a calm and peace so profound that Clara, for the first time, felt completely serene. As she ascended, the scene below her began to fade. The destroyed car, the flashing lights, the paramedics, all became a distant blur until they vanished entirely. What remained was only the light and an immense love that enveloped her. Clara then realized there was another presence there. At first it was subtle, a feeling of warmth and recognition, until she heard a voice. It wasn't loud, but it carried both authority and love in equal measure. "Clara," the voice said. She turned and saw a figure emerging from the light. It was Jesus. Clara had no doubts. His presence radiated so much love and understanding that tears filled her eyes, even though she no longer had a physical body. Jesus extended his hand, and Clara instinctively grasped it. As she touched his hand, she felt a wave of warmth and energy pass through her entire being. It was as if all the pain, confusion, and fear she had felt throughout her life melted away instantly. As they moved through the light, Clara noticed shapes and colors forming around them. She saw flashes of her life, moments from her childhood, joys, pains, and even memories she had forgotten. But the most surprising thing was that there was no judgment. Every mistake, every failure was met with deep understanding and immense compassion. Then Jesus spoke again. "You are not here by chance," he said. Clara looked at him, and the intensity of his eyes, which seemed to know everything about her, made her heart beat faster. "What I am going to show you concerns not only your life, but the future of humanity." Suddenly, the light around her began to change. The warmth and peace remained, but Clara felt that something of great importance was about to be revealed. She found herself in a new place, not exactly in the sky, but in a space that didn't seem earthly. The ground beneath her feet glowed, and the atmosphere was bathed in an ethereal golden hue. The light seemed to come from all sides at once. Then Jesus turned to her and said, "Look." Ahead of them, the air began to ripple, and Clara saw visions forming, images of earth, of people, and of events yet to come. She saw a gigantic cosmic clock, its hands moving quickly toward midnight. The earth seemed to pulse with tension. Jesus explained, "The world is approaching the end of a 26,000-year cosmic cycle, a cycle that will bring profound changes, both spiritual and physical." Clara saw images of a near future, where people lived in a world of advanced technology. She saw small implants in their hands that allowed them to buy food and access information instantly. People were biologically connected to these systems, but they didn't realize the cost. "It seems like progress," Jesus said, "but it will be the greatest illusion humanity has ever faced." Clara saw a huge divide between the people. Some embraced the new technology, living in a controlled and orderly world, while others rejected it, living outside this system but with a more vibrant spirituality. "They will have to choose," Jesus said. Clara looked at him, her eyes full of questions. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Jesus gazed deeply into her eyes and answered, "Because you are one of the chosen." Clara felt her spirit tremble. "But who will believe me?" she questioned. "Those who have ears to hear will hear," Jesus replied. Jesus then took her to a new vision. Clara saw how accepting this technology seemed at first glance to be a solution to economic and healthcare problems. People would initially embrace the implants because they would bring stability and security. But Jesus showed her the truth behind it. Initially, the implant would be seen as something practical, no passwords, no credit cards, everything easily accessible. However, Jesus revealed that the real cost would be spiritual. The implants would begin to alter people's emotions and thoughts, making them more susceptible to manipulation. "Freedom will be lost," Jesus explained, "but people won't realize it because the appearance of comfort will be tempting." Clara then saw that this technology would bring an irreversible division. Those who accepted the implants would live in a controlled world, disconnected from true spiritual essence. But those who rejected this system would face great challenges and difficulties. However, Jesus reassured her, they will be protected, not by physical strength, but by spiritual strength. Jesus then placed his hand on Clara's shoulder. "It is time for you to go back," he said softly. "But how can I share all of this?" Clara asked, still dazed. "Speak the truth," he replied, "and I will take care of the rest." Suddenly, the light around Clara began to fade, and she felt her consciousness being pulled down. In the next instant, she found herself back in her body, gasping, with the paramedics around her. Her life would never be the same after that experience. In the days following her recovery, Clara couldn't shake the profound sense of clarity that had settled in her spirit. She had been shown not only the future, but the true nature of life and existence. One night, while trying to process everything she had lived, the visions returned, not as hallucinations, but as flashes of spiritual truths. She saw how every moment of her life was interconnected with a larger plan. How all the choices she had made, all the failures, and even the smallest acts of kindness were part of a grand cosmic design, something beyond what she had ever imagined. During her experience, Clara saw scenes from her life, moments that deeply marked her, such as when she was a child and felt alone in the playground, not realizing that an angel was beside her, silently comforting her. She also saw the moment when her father left her life, leaving her mother to struggle alone. At that time, Clara felt abandoned by God, but now, as she relived those moments, she realized that, in fact, God had been present, strengthening her mother's heart and guiding Clara's steps to face the storm. Clara was also shown how the choices of other people impacted her life in ways she hadn't understood before. She saw how a simple act of kindness from a stranger when she was late for an important college interview triggered a series of events that led her to a life-changing opportunity that later shaped her as an astrologer. "Nothing is by chance," Jesus told her. Clara saw how human suffering was not a punishment, but a catalyst for growth. Every challenge was an opportunity for the soul to rise, to align more deeply with the divine truth. Then Jesus revealed something even deeper, the collective purpose of humanity. Clara saw how humans were created to be conduits of divine light and love. The true purpose of life was not just to survive or accumulate material success, but to grow spiritually, reconnect with the divine, and help others awaken to their true nature. She was shown how each human soul carries a spark of God's essence. When people live aligned with this divine nature, through love, truth, and service, they become powerful beacons of light. But when they stray from this essence, surrendering to greed, hatred, and fear, they fragment spiritually. Jesus explained to her that the change that would occur in 2025 was part of a larger cosmic plan. Humanity was approaching a turning point, a final test that would determine whether they would awaken to their divine potential or succumb to spiritual darkness. Clara realized that her life and the lives of others was not insignificant. Every thought, every word, every action had weight and importance. The choices humanity made in the coming years would shape the future, not only of Earth, but of the entire spiritual structure of existence. After her near-death experience, Clara began to notice a strange sensitivity to the energy around her. She could feel the changes in the atmosphere, small vibrations that most people overlooked. It was as if the universe itself was pulsating with growing tension. During the nights, she had vivid dreams, where she saw the immense cosmic clock that Jesus had shown her, with its hands moving rapidly toward an invisible deadline. Sometimes the clock would break, transforming into light, and other times it would explode into chaotic darkness. Clara knew that this was not just a dream, but a warning. Jesus had shown her the cosmic timeline during her near-death experience. He explained that humanity was living within a 26,000-year cycle, a period related to Earth's alignment with the galactic center. This cycle had influenced human consciousness, spiritual evolution, and the rise and fall of civilizations. Clara saw how ancient cultures like the Mayans, Egyptians, and Hopi already knew of this cycle. Tracking the cosmic patterns and understanding that the end of a cycle would bring huge changes in human consciousness. But the change that would occur in 2025 would be different from all the others. In the vision, Clara saw Earth positioned at a crucial point in the galactic field. Energies from the center of the galaxy were flowing to the planet, creating a shift in the spiritual frequency of humanity. It was as if the vibrational field of Earth was being recalibrated, preparing for an awakening or a collapse. Jesus explained to her that this change would reveal everything that was hidden, not only in the political and economic fields, but also in the spiritual. People's true intentions, their hidden shadows, and their spiritual forces would come to the surface. Clara saw how this transformation would create two distinct realities. Those who aligned with the higher spiritual frequency would experience a deep awakening. They would become more intuitive, more sensitive to energy, and more connected with divine truth. Miracles would become more common, healing would accelerate, and manifestation would become easier. But those who resisted the change, those who clung to control, greed, and fear, would experience the opposite. Their spiritual consciousness would begin to close. They would become more dependent on external systems, technology, government, material structures, and would find themselves trapped in a reality defined by artificial order, disconnected from spiritual truth. Clara saw that the end of the 26,000-year cycle would not be a singular event, but a gradual process unfolding over months and even years. However, 2025 would be the turning point. The decisions made in that year would define the path of human consciousness for generations to come. The cosmic clock Clara had seen was not just symbolic, it was real. The change was happening now, and humanity had little time to choose which path to follow. Clara saw how this transition wouldn't start with wars or violence, but with convenience. She envisioned a society where people no longer needed phones or credit cards. Instead, they had small implants under their skin that allowed them to access money, healthcare, and instant communication. These implants would be presented as solutions to modern problems, a way to combat identity theft, optimize healthcare, and make life more efficient. Initially, people would enthusiastically embrace the novelty, finding it practical and convenient. Banks, governments, and even churches would support them, saying it was just a technology with no spiritual consequences. But Jesus showed her that, in reality, the spiritual cost would be immense. The implant wasn't just a tool, it was a direct connection to a control system. It would alter people's brain chemistry, making them more susceptible, more compliant. Jesus explained, freedom will be traded for convenience, but people won't realize it. They will be seduced, not forced. The illusion of progress will be the greatest lie humanity has ever faced. Clara saw how, over time, the implants would become more sophisticated, eventually integrating into people's nervous systems. Governments would claim it was to improve public health and prevent disease, banks to increase financial security, corporations to optimize efficiency. But Jesus revealed the truth behind it all: control. People with implants could be monitored in real time, their emotions could be adjusted, their thoughts and even beliefs influenced. Those who refused to accept the implants would be excluded from society. They would not be able to work, buy food, or access medical care. Clara saw how this division would deepen, with families being torn apart, neighbors becoming strangers. She saw how the introduction of the implant would not just be a social or economic change, but a radical spiritual change. The implant was not just a technological innovation, it had a spiritual consequence, altering the very nature of human consciousness. Clara was also shown how, initially, those who accepted the implant would feel safer and more connected to the system. Their lives would become easier, transactions faster, healthcare more accessible, and travel simpler. At first, everything would seem more efficient, but over time, Clara saw how people would become increasingly dependent on the system. They would lose their ability to think for themselves. Their emotions would be moderated. Their intuition would weaken, and their connection with God would begin to disappear. Conversations between friends and family would lose depth. People would begin to repeat programmed responses. Their expressions would become vacant, and the light in their eyes would fade. Clara saw families sitting at the table, but instead of meaningful conversations, they received suggestions through the implants: what to eat, what to say, how to feel. For children born with the implants, this would seem normal. They wouldn't know anything else, and this spiritual control would become an integral part of their lives. Meanwhile, Clara saw those who rejected the implant facing increasing resistance. Initially, they would be labeled as paranoid, outdated, resistant to progress. But soon, the pressure would grow stronger. Financial systems would be updated to work only with the implant. Employers would require the implant to access secure facilities, schools would impose it to enroll students, and healthcare providers would deny treatment to those not connected to the system. Clara saw entire communities being reshaped. In some, most people had accepted the implants. The cities were orderly, efficient, but devoid of spiritual life. Human warmth had been lost. In others, where people resisted the system, life was harder. The infrastructure failed, resources were scarce, and society seemed to be collapsing. Yet, Clara saw a spiritual light emanating from these people. They were more connected with God, stronger in their faith, more protected by divine strength. "They chose me," Jesus told her. Clara saw how the people in these communities resisted the system. They prayed together, shared resources, and their connection with the divine grew stronger. Even without access to modern technology, they were more spiritually connected and protected, not by physical strength, but by the strength of faith. Clara saw how those who had initially accepted the implants seemed to prosper. Their lives were easier, more stable. But beneath the surface, Clara realized something was wrong. Their spiritual strength was beginning to wither. They could no longer feel God's presence in their lives. Their prayers had become empty and powerless, and their connection with the Holy Spirit was fading. They had traded spiritual freedom for worldly comfort. Jesus explained to her, "Those who accepted the implant traded freedom for the false promise of security. They are integrated into the system, but their soul is empty." Clara saw how divided families became more common. Those who had accepted the implants were immersed in a controlled, soulless life, while those who resisted were becoming increasingly isolated but stronger spiritually. They were preserving their divine essence. Their prayers had power, and their connection with God remained unshakable. Jesus told her that, despite the apparent prosperity of those who had accepted the system, these individuals were losing their essence, their souls. Jesus then revealed to Clara a special group of people, the chosen ones. They are not powerful leaders, nor celebrities, but ordinary people, teachers, farmers, nurses, young people, even children. But in their hearts, they carry an extraordinary strength. Clara saw these chosen ones in her vision. They weren't seeking power or fame, but were deeply connected with God. They had been spiritually prepared for this moment before they were born, carrying the wisdom of ancient times and the knowledge of divine truth. Clara saw these chosen ones gathered in small groups, in homes and hidden places. They prayed together, receiving direct guidance from the Holy Spirit. Their gatherings were not large or public, but the power of their prayers created waves of change in the spiritual environment around them. Jesus explained, "They will not fight with weapons, but with the truth." Clara saw how these chosen ones were not trying to overthrow governments or transform society by force. They simply refused to participate in the system, rejecting the implant and living outside modern technology. They were light in a dark world, and their unwavering faith inspired others. Clara saw how the chosen ones faced attacks from the system. Governments called them extremists. Media platforms accused them of spreading misinformation and fear. Some were imprisoned, others forced to live in hiding, but their faith never wavered. Jesus explained, "They will not fight with weapons, but with the truth. They will not be moved by the threats of the world, for their strength comes from something much greater." Clara saw how these chosen ones began to inspire others. Those who had initially accepted the implant started questioning their choices. Some even managed to reverse the spiritual effects of the implant by turning back to God, seeking repentance and spiritual renewal. The light of the chosen will expose the darkness, Jesus said, but many will not be ready to see it. Clara realized that, as the spiritual light of the chosen ones spread, the darkness surrounding those who accepted the system grew stronger. They were blind to the truth, but the chosen ones remained steadfast in their mission. Jesus revealed to Clara that the spiritual battle was not just a matter of physical control, but of controlling human souls. The true goal of the system is not merely to dominate people's actions, but their consciousness and their connection with God. If they can sever people's connection to the divine, they will have total control, Jesus said. Clara saw how the implant acted like a spiritual gateway, allowing dark forces to manipulate people's thoughts and emotions. The shadowy entities, which fed on fear, resentment, and spiritual emptiness, were more present than ever. Through the implant, they could influence minds, pulling people further from God and making them more vulnerable to manipulation. Clara saw how this control would deepen. By accepting the implant, people would lose the ability to discern between truth and lies, between right and wrong. They would become like puppets, acting under the influence of invisible forces. But Jesus also showed Clara a wave of awakening that would begin to spread. People who had previously been asleep in their spirit would start having dreams, visions, and spiritual experiences. They would turn to prayer and meditation, seeking the truth that lay beyond the lies of the system. Clara saw how the spiritual light would grow, even amidst the growing darkness, and humanity would once again be faced with a choice: follow the path of control and conformity, or trust fully in God, allowing their inner light to guide the world towards spiritual awakening. If you connected with this story and want to follow more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive notifications. We post videos every day at the same time, so you won't miss any content. Be part of this journey of discovery and transformation. Subscribe now.